Torsten Mueller-Oetvoes, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning.
Good to have you
Good morning.
Well, so we're talking about a 31% rise in sales during the course of 2011. I'm just wondering, do you have concerns, or is there some sense of trepidation perhaps on your part that you may not be able to sustain growth at that level in the coming year?
I mean, looking into the economic outlook over the next years, I think there is still some positive signs at the end of the tunnel. When you look into the US market, for instance, there are good signs of recovery. I'm still a believer that we will see ongoing growth in the Asian markets. The European markets might be a little bit, let's say, shaky. That might come. But all in all, I'm optimistic that we see a next record year for Rolls Royce Motor Cars in 2012.
How are you anticipating the European markets being shaky, as you describe it, in the next few months, in the next 12 months? How is that going to impact you?
I mean, it's very hard to forecast because our clients normally don't run out of money. It is very much what I would call consumer sentiment. So when the mood is not right, then of course, for many potential customers, the mood might also not be right to go for a new luxury car. But I can report that we have seen an increased growth over the last couple of months still, and that we are doing well. And as you say, we have done a record year even in the history of that company.
You mentioned many of your customers, quite rightly you say they are recession-proof. Perhaps they can be described as that. Do you think about the possibility of there being a stigma attached, nevertheless, to a brand like Rolls-Royce in a difficult economic environment like this one, particularly here in Europe?
I can't say so. When I look, for instance, in the Rolls-Royce Ghost, our model we launched 2 years ago, which is a more subtle way to drive a Rolls-Royce, that car had great reception here in Europe. And for instance, in the German market, we have seen a doubling in sales over last year. And that is very much due to the Ghost. And the same holds true, by the way, here also for the UK. We have seen an increase of 30% in our home market here in the UK, which is a clear proof that Britons love Rolls-Royce.
All right, so I just want to look, you've mentioned the UK and the rest of Europe. Let's just take a look at how you've been doing over in the US, because Rolls-Royce grew by some 17%, didn't it, in 2011. Meanwhile, if we just take a look at Bentley, owned by VW, they managed to increase their US sales by some 32%. I'm just wondering, is there a danger that you are going to lose ground in the US, in North America, because of your strong focus on China?
No, I wouldn't say so. When you look into the share of our markets worldwide, then it is a close head-to-head race between the North American market and also the Asian markets. And what we have seen over the last months is that China overtook the United States. But I mean, a growth of 17% is still growth, and that's a sustainable and substantial number.
But still behind Bentley.
Yeah, but Bentley is also, let's say, due to the fact that they have introduced a couple of new models last year, which we haven't. And I mean, given that, plus 17% is a great and outstanding performance for us in the US market.
So China, a clear priority for you going forward?
I would say it's a clear priority to check in all markets the potential, which means not only in China, but all the rest of Asian markets, but clearly also focusing on the North American market.
And in terms of some of the individual models, just wanted to focus in on the extended wheelbase version of the Ghost. Now, you say that this has accounted for the lion's share of growth in 2011. And if we just take a look at this, if we can find it, this model is luxurious, even by your standards, Rolls-Royce standards, I should say. I'm just wondering, is this a trend that you're planning to develop even further?
What do you mean, extended wheelbase cars?
Is that something that you'll be doing more of?
Extended wheelbase cars definitely belong to Rolls-Royce in a way of that many of our customers, especially in the Asian area, use those cars also as chauffeur-driven cars. They drive the cars themselves, and also within the week they use them as chauffeur-driven cars. And for that reason, we offer more extended space in the back.
Do you think that there is something of a discrepancy in the way Rolls-Royce is perceived globally? You're doing very well in China, you've quite rightly pointed out. And it seems that, you know, much of your popularity in these emerging markets very much to do with the status symbol. But do you think the brand has as much power and as much influence now as it did, say, 30, 40 years ago in developed Western markets?
I would say so. If you look into sales numbers we have achieved here in Europe, that is also, let's say, a record in the history of that brand. And the brand is still very strong, especially here in the UK market and also in Western markets like the US market. So Rolls-Royce is definitely not only a brand for the Asian markets. It's still a very contemporary brand. We have even rejuvenated that brand with the Ghost introduction, a car which is a more subtle way to drive a Rolls Royce, a car which is intended to be the business car for daily use.
If I can just quickly ask you about your economic, or about your outlook, your expectations for China, because obviously that's a very key market for you. But there are many analysts talking about the prospect of a hard landing in that country, a significant slowdown in growth, particularly as the government tries to tackle inflation. Is that something that companies and indeed investors are underestimating?
I mean, we are watching that closely, of course. I mean, we are well aware of those plans, and let's wait and see. Very hard to forecast how that would affect the luxury car market. Let's wait and see. But I'm still optimistic when we see, for instance, also the Middle Eastern markets recovering, and when we also see this very positive signals for the North American market.
Thanks very much. A very positive Torsten Mueller-Oetvoes, CEO of Rolls
Thanks.
Royce. Thanks for coming on programme.
Thanks.